Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, the place for internet technology professionals whose work-life balance plan has imploded. We are here to provide solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hi, I'm Joanne Victoria, and I'm the host of the San IT Project podcast, commonly known as the Sanity Project podcast. I partner with IT pros in the telecommunications, technology, entertainment, and mass media industries whose work-life balance plan has imploded and who want more success, more confidence, more fun, and more inner peace. The Sanity Project podcast is a platform for experts in the personal development and IT communities to share their wisdom, expertise, and solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Our guest today is Betsy Pake. Betsy Pake is a transformational coach, certified NLP coach, and speaker who hosts the popular podcast, The Art of Living Big. Betsy is the author of the best-selling book, Become a Nutrition Ninja, and Start Small, Live Big. Her mission is to help you live to your full potential and live the big life you deserve. Today, Betsy is going to help us and you shift the focus to a new way of thinking so we can all reach our goals with more ease. Welcome to the show, Betsy Pake.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here today.
Well, I am glad that you are here because what you talk about, I think, is fundamental to everybody's life, and at different stages of our life, we may change what our goals are, but we can't always change our way of thinking. And I'm gathering that's what you're going to help our audience do.
Yeah, I think that when we can actually shift the way we see a particular problem or see a situation, that's when the magic really starts happening. Because if we're in the problem, if we're in the same mindset that created it in the first place, then we're just going to continue to create more and more and more and more of the same, right? And so being able to have that shift where all of a sudden you see something a little bit differently, that's what I call a miracle. So miracles can happen every single day as you shift how you see things and start to see problems in a new light.
So how can you help people shift? I know this is something that's important to our listeners, and it's important to me as well, because people have a difficult time. I always tell people you've got supposedly a 360-degree circle. If you take one step left or one step to the right, your perspective changes. And I'm assuming that that's a little bit of what you're going to be talking about, how to change their perspective on the situation, on the alleged problem.
Yeah, one of the things that happens is people are really, really busy, right? And when we get really busy and we get really overwhelmed and we think that we're the ones that have to do everything. I mean, I notice that in my own life. Somebody will try to help me and I'll say, no, I got it, just because I know how to do it. But the reality is that we tend to overload ourselves. And when we overload ourselves and we get really stressed, we get really run down, it makes it harder and harder for us to have an objective point of view when we're looking at a problem. So in my book, Start Small, Live Big, that's one of the things that I talk about. We see people that kind of look like they have it all together or they're living like this big life. But really to get to that, they had to start out a whole lot smaller. And so if you're struggling with something, one like really quick and easy way that I teach in the book to get a different perspective on stuff is to, first of all, just to slow down. Meditation is something people talk about a lot, and I think it's great, but a lot of people really struggle with meditation. And so they hear like meditation could help me slow down, but I really struggle with it. So they feel like it's just one more place where they have failed. But I think there's some real benefit to just stopping for a minute, especially if you're in the middle of a problem, right? You're in the middle of it and you think I have no time. Stop and just breathe deep and hold it and then let it out. Just that will start to shift. It actually shifts your brain waves. It aligns your heart, the vibration of your heart and your head. And that's when you can start getting a much more clearer view. That's when you turn on portions of your brain that are much more problem solving.
I think that, I'm sorry, I just flashed on something. When you are rushing, trying to get something taken care of, and you're deep into what's going on, you don't provide oxygen to the brain, as you said. And I don't think people realize that, because we all tell people when we're in, aligned businesses and paths, we tell people, take a deep breath, and they don't understand why. It's because we're depriving our brain and our heart as well from oxygen. And if they don't want to meditate, I'm sure you have a cure for that. But they need the oxygen to the brain in order to take the opportunity to create a different decision.
Yeah, and not breathing is totally normal thing. They teach the Navy SEALs, one of the key elements that they found with successful Navy SEALs. So the ones who started their training and actually finished, and graduated, one of the 4 key differences was that they stopped and breathed. Like something so simple could propel you from not finishing Navy SEAL training to finishing. So that breathing piece really can't be underestimated. It really has a profound effect. And, our technology now is so good with reminding us. The Apple Watch will remind you to breathe. You can set it up so that it tells you and reminds you, stop for a second, just breathe. And it really will help to start put some of that mindfulness back in your day. Huge shift.
Yeah, breathing is so important. I just can't say enough about it. And mindfulness, of course. And I think people are afraid of the 2 M words, meditation and mindfulness, because they think you have to be an expert to meditate. And mindfulness, many people just don't get it. They don't get the word. They don't understand why it's beneficial. And I think we need to simplify the word mindfulness and just tell people to be in the moment with what's happening now, if that's a good description of it. Yeah. But people just don't. There are not many people. We're a slice of people. We coach people to live a better life and so on and so forth. But there are many people out there who don't engage in this kind of these kinds of exercises. They don't know what it all means to be mindful, and people have to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think they don't know what it means, but they actually probably do it a little bit every day. So here's an example. If you have a pet, do you have any pets, Joanne?
No.
Okay, so I've got a dog. I've got 2 dogs. And you'll notice people when they have dogs or cats, like they love them, right? They consider them part of the family, right? And I believe that's because pets are great and they have their own personalities and all of that. But I believe that one of the major reasons is because when you are petting your dog, and if somebody's listening and you have a pet and you're petting your dog and loving on your animal, you are totally in the moment. You're not leaning forward, worried about the future. You're not rehashing like the cringeworthy things you might have said like in 5th grade. You are in the moment. And so that's one of the reasons I think when people lose their pets, they're so upset. It's not just that they miss their pet. It's that they miss having something that brings them in the moment. And that may be the only thing they get all day. So, if you're listening and you're like, I don't have time to be mindful. I don't have time to meditate. You don't have to sit on a cushion for 2.5 hours. When you pull up to your job, stop, shut the car off for a second, and just breathe. Take 2 big, deep breaths in and hold them and let it out. You've done your meditation. Like you've done that moment of mindfulness. And then as you're going throughout your day, if you're washing your dishes, you're folding laundry, like whatever it is, if you can, how sometimes when you fold laundry, you kind of get in a zone.
Oh, yeah.
You can be really in that moment, right? And so when you can find small ways that you can get into the moment, then you can release some of the tension and stress because you're not worried. And the tension and stress comes from worrying about something that you perceive may happen or you may perceive that already did happen. But the reality is that all you really have is that exact moment, right? So I would say don't make it too hard and don't let those words overwhelm you. Just, you already do it. Just now start to notice it because you can add more of it into your life.
Yeah, people, I think it's like when people play cards, a game of cards, just doing something different than they normally do every other day, that takes them out of themselves. When guys who like to, those who do, at least in the older days, that used to be all the time, men worked on their cars. So when a guy's working on a car and they're rebuilding a car, that's why, it's always advisable if a dad can help a son rebuild a car, they learn a lot of things. Certainly they learn about rebuilding a car, but they also learn how to stop and slow down and engage themselves in not only other parts of their brain, but in their mindfulness aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I spent a lot of time on the hustle, like a lot of time. And that's sort of something we hear now in our culture too, right? Get on that grind. You got to hustle every day. Like, don't let up. And I think especially for your audience, they probably feel that and have that as part of their everyday lifestyle. And I did that for like about 20 years. And finally one day I was like, oh my gosh, I'm rushing so much and I'm trying to do so much and accomplish so much. But am I actually happy? Like, am I having a moment of happiness? And sometimes when I tell people what I'm about to tell you, they go, oh my gosh, you're kidding. But then they try it and they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. So now in the morning, I will hustle and I will work hard, but only after I've spent time every single morning doing something that makes me happy. And so it may be like when you get up in the morning, you have a schedule and you've got to get out the door. But maybe there's something you can do or you can add into that morning that actually brings you what I call into alignment, which is like where I just feel really happy and I can be in the moment. And it could be like when you're taking a shower, you're thinking about all of the things that are great, that are going to happen throughout the day. Using your imagination, what crazy, amazing thing could happen. And, maybe it's when you're driving in the car, like you always are trying to learn something or listen to the news, but maybe you turn the news off. Maybe you put music on that makes you feel really good. And now when you get to work, and now when I get started with work, I'm in this really good space and I can actually start to get little nudges from my intuition about what might be the next thing to do. I may have 3 or 4 projects to do. If I'm in a really good mood, I might go, that's the one that feels like I should do it first. And it always goes smoothly. It always goes, easily and quickly and not the snafus I would have had. So there is a magical component to actually having that moment where you get happy before you get on the hustle. Work hard and get on the hustle if that's your thing. But if you could get in a space where you feel really good first, you'll have a lot more success with the hustle output.
I agree. I still hustle, but not as much as I did decades ago. And I hustled so much, I didn't even know who I was or where I was. It was and stopping it was not easy, nor fun. It was just not the right thing. It just did not fit in my life to not work at the rate I had already worked. And I think you're right, because we see everywhere, what's your side hustle? What are you doing as a side job? And they even advertise, they have, commercials on television talking about, get your hustle on. And I think this is the wrong way of doing things. And we're just going back to the way things were years ago. So it doesn't really change anything. So it's up to you, the individual. It's up to you who are listening to stop hustling. We know you have jobs. We know you have things to do, but Betsy is going to come up with other tools to help you while you're working, I assume, while you're on the job.
Yeah. So I have a process that I call CHASE, and it's an acronym. And when I come against a big problem, and I have had my moment where I've breathed and I've been mindful and I still have this big problem, there is a practical side to this. Like, what do I really need to do? And my process called CHASE stands for create, help, attain, start, and evaluate. And I'll kind of explain the first part to you. But you can get my book for free. We'll tell you how to do that. And it'll explain this whole process. But CHASE, the C is for create. And really what I do is I tell my clients when I work with them, get a big blank piece of paper. And right at the top, write where you are right now. So this is my problem. And at the bottom of the page, write what would be the perfect outcome. Because I think many times we'll have a problem, but we just know we don't want the problem. we don't know where we really want to go. We don't have the vision for what would make this good. And so write down at the bottom, what would really make it great? Like, what would make this an outstanding outcome? And then set a timer, set a timer for 5 minutes, or depending on the problem, 10 minutes. And in the middle part of that page, just write down all the small steps that could possibly happen that would take you from the problem at the top of the page to the wonderful outcome at the bottom of the page. And now when people do this for the first time, they'll do it and they'll come up with like 3 things. And those are the 3 things they already thought about. And that's why I have them set the timer. Because when you set the timer, having a problem and problem solving is a creative process. And so if you have that timer, it's going to push your brain to start thinking creatively, thinking of other things you could do. And I write down like the most outlandish things when I do this. I have a worksheet I call the Chase worksheet, and you can get that free on my website too. But in that worksheet, like I will write down crazy stuff that I probably would never do to get from A to B. But I write it down because it gets it out of my brain and something new can come in. And then I go through a process where I find out all those small little tasks. Like, can I pick one thing that would take me maybe less than 5 or 10 minutes to do? And just start with that. And once I get started towards something that might provide the solution, then if I can use those tools of like being in the moment and listening to my intuition and feeling what feels right, using our guts, right? We have this great emotional system that'll tell us like that seems like that's working or that's not really working right. And then we can start to follow those little breadcrumbs to the next thing. But laying out all those small steps is just a smart first step to identify what could happen. It kind of takes you out of the problem, and puts you into like some of the solutions, what those could be.
Those sound perfect. I want to remind people that Betsy's website is betsypake.com. That's B as in boy, E-T-A, start over, Joanne. BETSYPAKE.com. And her email address is betsy@betsypake.com. And access to a Kindle version of her book, Start Small, Live Big, is available on my website and on my podcast page on Facebook, which is the Sanity Project Podcast. So I have a create, help. Is it attitude? What's the A?
Attitude is attain. So sometimes we actually have to learn something new. Like sometimes it's a longer process for something. Mm-hmm. And so when you have all those small steps, if you can circle all the places you could get help, like where could you delegate stuff out? And then I like to just put a cross through the things I need to attain more. So if I got to attain more information, I'm going to put that to the side for a second. And then it sort of helps me look at all my small steps. And they'll jump out at me, the ones that are truly available for me to do right now. So attain is the A, and then start is the S. And then E is for evaluate. And that's one of the big things, because sometimes people get started, they get started on a diet, or they get started on a workout program, or they get started on, a project for work, and they don't ever evaluate what's working. And there may be something that isn't working that they keep doing that they could eliminate. And so now you're weeding things out of your life that don't work anyway. And then that releases the stress, and that makes things lighter. And I think, as I look at that whole formula, the help is one of the biggest hangups people have, because we always think, well, I can just do it faster than I could create, the teaching to have somebody else do it. But if we can start to get in the habit of delegating, like I like to write my list for the whole entire month of stuff I need. And I like to have just about everything circled to delegate out. Like, how great would that be if everything could work and be delegated out, except for the fun stuff that I want to do, like this, like being on podcasts and doing my own podcast, like all of the other stuff I just delegate out to somebody else. And, sometimes that's my kid, for budget reasons. And sometimes it's a professional that can do it. But I think when we can get in the mindset, even if you don't even if you're like, I cannot delegate anything, circle the things that could be delegatable, right? So circle those things and say, well, what could be? I'm not going to do it, but what could be? Because that starts to change the way you're seeing things. And then that starts to change the way things show up for you.
Yeah, as you're talking, the observation of how you're looking at things is how you can change things, because sometimes you don't need the things you think you need.
Yes.
And if you look at delegating them and you go, well, I don't want to delegate that, the question could be, do I really need that? I know that there are many ways to have people help you that are relatively inexpensive, but it's not just that. They give their own perspective on things as well, which is what you need to broaden your awareness of the situation or how you're handling it and how it would be perceived by others. Somebody might just ask you a question. But as you said, even if you don't want to delegate, but you're looking at what you think needs to be delegated, that's a mind opener as well. Everything along with breathing, please. Everybody's just got to keep breathing before and after they look at their list.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, all of those things can just start to shift. And when you see things differently, then you start to see other things that come up a little bit differently too.
I know there was one guest I had a couple of weeks ago. I can't exactly remember his name, but I think he wrote a book called The Ego's Code. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we spoke about was he did not get out of bed pretty much until he was clear that his mind was in a space to handle things as happily as possible. Mm. Unless he was aligned with the energy he knew he needed to have in order to go and take on small or big projects, he wouldn't make any moves.
Yeah, I think people think that's a little crazy if they've never heard that before. But I think I don't do any work unless I'm like, I feel like that I'm good. Like I'm in a good mood. This is a good place. If I'm having a bad day, I will move things and shift things in my calendar. And that sounds like kind of crazy, right? And I probably would have thought I was crazy hearing that, like when I was in corporate America. But now looking back, there are so many things I had control over when I was in corporate America that I could have shifted or I approached in a different way, depending on like how I was feeling. And now I have much quicker ways to get in alignment. You know, if I'm not having a good day, I do not continue my day like that. I change it, and I change it quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And as you mentioned, you thought you couldn't change things in corporate America, but you can. Mm-hmm. If we start with, I have no power, that's what one is ultimately saying. I can't change my project. I can't change my approach to my project, or I can't change the fact that I need to get it done by, 4:30 this afternoon. You can. You just pick out things and move them in different, give them different values, and all of a sudden it's different for you. But I think the aspect about not getting out of bed or not going through with your day unless it's calm and cleared and excited, or your observation has changed, you can't be negative, you need to be more positive. That approach to me is really normal. I don't think it's crazy at all.
Yeah.
I just don't. I reevaluate. I have a list before I go to bed at night and wake up in the morning. I feel my own sensory issues coming up. And what's a challenge? What isn't a challenge? What I want to do, and can I shift anything? And actually, half the time, if I write things down before I go to bed, many of those things are completed by the time I get up. They somehow have shifted because I seek help in that manner. Yeah. But this is good information that you're giving to everyone, not just the people who have a 9-to-5 or supposedly a 9-to-5 job, but right. People who are coaches as well, other entrepreneurs, in order to be in charge of their own life and in order to reach their goals more easily.
Yes, with more joy. Like it doesn't have to be a struggle. Yeah. And there are some people that are on the hustle. Like we hear, like if you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
He's always on the hustle, right? But I believe that he feels really aligned in thinking like that. So he is actually not in a negative space. He's in a really happy space. And so being like working really hard and doing all of that brings him so much joy that he's aligned. Like, so that's why it works. It doesn't work necessarily because he's hustling. It works because he loves it.
He loves it, yes.
Yeah, but if you put that on somebody else that doesn't love that and they think that's how I have to be successful, well, it's not. I don't believe it is. I believe he's successful because that's what he loves. That's what makes him happy. And so that's fun to do. So he can do it more and more. But if you can shift and just find where you feel really happy and then do more of that, that's the key.
Yeah, people who try to copy Gary and being that stringent about hustle, hustle, hustle all the time, if it's not in their DNA, it's not going to work for them.
Yeah. I get like a heartache when I see people where I put stuff on social media or whatever, where they're like, work hard, stay focused, put your nose down. I'm like, oh God, like I just want to be happy and do the things that feel good. You know? Yeah.
I just tell them to take a nap because, it's, get a life already and stopping is more successful than hustling all the time. So wanted to ask you one last question. What has been a lesson or advice that has stuck with you?
I think really doing the things that I'm really good at. So when I even first started my entrepreneurial journey, I tried to do lots of things. I blogged, I had a podcast, I did all the social media, every single kind of social media. Like I did everything. And I never felt like I was really doing enough because it all was so much. But when somebody said, just pick the one social media thing you really love and like stay in your lane, do your thing, do that in the way that is really you. So instead of like trying to have the perfect caption to my Instagram photo, I just write something silly because that's who I am. And that's when I noticed things really got traction for me. So instead of trying to fit a mold of what I'm supposed to do, but instead just do what feels authentic and true and really my personality, things became more fun and more people were drawn to that. So I think when you find that, when you can stay in your lane and just move forward with the things you're good at.
I want to remind everybody that if you go to betsypake.com, you're going to find a form about the CHASE idea, CHASE, which is create, help, attain, start, and evaluate. And also I'm providing you with a link to Betsy's free book, Start Small, Live Big. That's Betsy Pake. Okay, people, I'm not going to edit this out. I'm just going to say Betsy, BetsyPake.com, and because the universe is trying to get me to stop. And I will fight the universe sometimes. I want to ask everyone who's listening to this to refer it to your friends. Refer this podcast with Betsy Pake to your friends so that they can listen to it. You can give a great review on iTunes if you want, but the more people that listen to this, the more people are going to get help quickly, easily, and effectively from Betsy Pake. Start small, live big. And you can go to my website at askjoannevictoria.com, sign up for my newsletter, and you will receive a free copy of the True Self Handbook, A Guide to Transform Your Life. I want to thank Betsy for being here today, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Betsy. It's been great. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com and continue the conversation on my podcast page. And get a free copy of my book, The True Self Handbook, A Guide to Transform Your Life. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.